I think it always starts from an idea that starts from an experience. And something that I've been thinking about a lot was the idea of the medium as the metaphor. And I think when there is a concept that I want to explore, I think of what material would be best to translate that idea. I feel that glass conceptually is able to touch upon all those things depending on how it's worked with and how it's presented. I think the root of my practice comes from something that I feel is all-encompassing, that encompasses my conceptual interests, my spiritual interests, my everyday life, and the physical world as well. So specifically with glass, I think glass touches upon all those things. But when I started making the glass pools, I was really interested in finding the communion in polarity. And by that, I mean finding the balance between opposites, like being in a moment of absolute control, but absolutely being able to let go. So then how can you exist in that fine moment? And I think that is the practice of being in that space, in that headspace, in that physical and mental space, translates into sustaining a balance. It's like a practice to become better in my everyday life. So I primarily work with molten glass. And in working with molten glass, I started blowing glass, and I still incorporate a lot of blown glass. But in other forms, I work with the French pool technique. I love that process, and I love the immediacy of it. And I started working with inflating glass with compressed air. And most recently, I've been loving to work just inflating solid forms. I worked almost on a daily basis here at the studio. Every time there was a gap between ladles, or the team I was working with took a break or went to the bathroom or something happened, I would just gather glass on a solid rod, basically make a very hot paperweight and just inflate it. I am really interested in the immediacy of the material and in working without a reheating chamber. And I have actually for the past 5 to 7 years developing these forms that can be done from start to finish only with the heat of the molten glass, so the heat from the furnace, without using a reheating chamber and without transferring them onto a punty. So I kind of created that challenge for myself. How can I make a freestanding, complete object from start to finish in under 5 minutes using only the heat from the furnace? And specifically the formations I make, when you pour them onto a graphite pad or a metal table to inflate them, the texture that they get from being very aggressively cooled down by the surface, because glass is super hot, when it lands on graphite or metal, it cools down. And it creates this pattern almost as stretch marks. I describe the cool marks, the chill marks, as that. So the prints that are created in it naturally by the way it cools down and inflates, how does that contribute aesthetically to the outcome? I did a tobacco ceremony. It was the first time I did that in glass, something that I had been thinking about for months that I wanted to do. And it was kind of like in the past and practices, it was used as an offering of gratitude. Initially, I felt a little shy to ask because of burning something like that in the studio, but I was really blown away by the support for saying yes, and then the help in setting up the studio to be able to facilitate doing that in a seamless manner. So that's what I mean. It's like not just the verbal support of like, yeah, we're here for you, welcome, let us know if anything you need, but actually when there was something that I needed that was important for me to do, the studio followed through. And that was really, really important, because I know that stuff, especially at large organizations, it's hard to go about certain rules. So I really appreciate the flexibility in that. Wow, being selected to be an artist in residence here at the studio is an immense privilege, and I am immensely grateful for it. It means a lot. It was something that I thought would potentially come years later, and it's just been amazing to be able to do that. I have so much respect and appreciation for the studio, having been here on a scholarship before, for the facilities, for the team, but also for the museum and the institution and Corning Incorporated and all the technological advances. I think this place really merges science, research, daily life, like contributions to society, but also education and access to the public. It's like a really all-encompassing situation to work with glass. So being able to work here and be part of that. Yeah, that's definitely planted so many seeds for the work I have started making here that now I will assemble into other larger sculptures. But the background of the content has been strengthened so much by my experience being here, and not just from a historic level and a conceptual level, but also from a scientific level. Like I had the pleasure of working with opaline glass, so that's something that also has been amazing, because a lot of the work I made, like I was talking about, is working with just the heat from the furnace. So I haven't really been able to use color in my practice because I have to have access to a color tank, and having access has allowed me to do that. And opaline specifically, I always thought it was a very special color because of how it looks, but I learned here through Harry at the studio and through the books that I got at the library that it looks transparent, and when you heat it, you have to let it cool down until it stops moving and then heat it back up, and that forms crystals in the glass that make it look opaque. And the more times you strike it, let it cool down and reheat it, the more crystals that will get formed on the surface of the material. But also, there is a limit to that. So if too many crystals form, then the crystals become something else. It stops being glass and it becomes incompatible with the glass. So in talking about like finding that balance, it's been such a pleasure to not just work with the material, but also work with the composition of the glass itself that I was using, to find that little sweet spot of what I consider to be this very like magical, milky, transparent white that you almost don't know what you're looking at, because it changes based on what light it's being hit. You can see it as looking light blue, it can also look white, but hit under a certain light it glows yellow. So just exploring those other possibilities, it has been something that has been wonderful about being here at the studio.